Hello! So, it has been quite some time, hasn't it, since my Elemental review that dropped nearly 6 months ago. I hope you guys are well. There's been a lot of changes on the channel, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm shifting away from gaming mostly. I'm going to move that over to my Twitch channel where I do live streams. So, a lot of videos, especially the Mario Kart videos, those are gone. And I'm rebooting. I'm bringing it back in a different form, in a way that requires less work and less burnout. So I'm introducing this new monthly rank series. You've maybe seen it on YouTube here and there. I'm going to be doing this monthly instead of like a yearly ranked where people talk about their top 10. I want to do it every month. This is, I think, a great way to bring back reviews, condense them into 2 to 3 minute discussions, and then depending on which films you like, we can talk about that in the comments instead of it always being like 6 reviews per month, which I just can't get out. I just don't have time and I don't have the motivation to do it. On top of this monthly series, I want to add another video throughout the month, hopefully. I can't always guarantee it, but maybe it'll be something just in regards to the month, the specific month, or maybe it'll be one of my favorite directors that I talk about, or someone I'm really curious about, or a movie, just a movie that released a long time ago that I just think deserves to be talked about on my channel, even if it doesn't get very noticed, right? It's something that I think will be something that I want to talk about, you know what I mean? And I hope you guys are excited for this series. I'm really excited to get into this. I won't be doing an intro like this every time, but I thought I'd just, do kind of a welcome back sort of shtick, and I hope you guys are well, and I guess without further ado, let's start the ranking series. Alright, so I started the month off with Priscilla. Priscilla is a biopic on Elvis Presley's wife. It is based on the book Elvis and Me, and it is directed by Sofia Coppola, daughter of Francis Ford Coppola. So obviously, let me get the complaints right out of the way. This is not an anti-Elvis film. What it does show is a much more personal look at the relationship between them and how Priscilla felt trapped in the relationship. This isn't focused on Elvis, so for me to critique how Jacob Elordi played the role would be kind of irrelevant, because his character is just there to showcase how Priscilla felt, I guess, if that makes any sense. The acting is good, but there are times where I felt like it lacked chemistry. It didn't do a good job at showcasing the transformation from when they started dating to the end of the relationship. There wasn't much that I felt was different besides them getting angry at each other and, him being absent from a lot of the film due to his career and cheating on other women. It does a decent job at showing the transformation of Priscilla from her ambitions to kind of losing faith in everything that was happening between them. But overall, it felt like we were skimming through memories instead of experiencing them. I just found that you could have looked this up on Wikipedia and gotten more from it. And maybe the entire point was to have knowledge going into this film so you could appreciate the visual representation of it. But to me, this is an already well-documented, famous story, and I personally felt like it just was turned into an above-average biopic that didn't offer anything unique or give deeper perspective into the characters. So I'm going to go ahead and give Priscilla a 3 out of 5. I thought it was decent. It was still entertaining and an interesting experience, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you want that visual representation of a already well-documented relationship. Alright, so The Holdovers is set in the early 70s and stars Paul Giamatti and Dominic Sessa. And what I love about this film is that it's not just set in the 70s, right? It wants to be a 70s film. So there are things in the film that maybe feel harder to, I guess, visualize in modern film because there's more distractions and it's harder to maybe get the message across because there was a lot more events happening back in the 70s that helped, I guess, create the narrative that they were wanting to share. And yeah, this film is a feel-good, heartfelt film. It is predictable at times, but it isn't. You know what I mean? It's very original in its own way. It's hilarious. I've never laughed so hard at a film like this, and you'd think it'd be really formulaic, but this is the first time I felt like these characters were very down to earth, and I think I am Paul Giamatti's character in some ways. Like, obviously I'm not outspoken like he is in the film, but I think a lot of people that went into the movie were like, oh yeah, I have that mindset a lot of the time, and that has become what I think of everything. And that may be why this film will be recognized as a great family Christmas film. But I seriously do think it deserves to be recognized as something that can be watched any time of the year. And I don't think this film is trying to be groundbreaking in the sense that it's supposed to blow your minds. I think what it's trying to do is really create a very original version in this genre. And what I think they more than succeeded at that by just simply addressing mental health and showing the parallels between the different generations of characters. So I'm going to give the Holdovers a whopping 4.5 out of 5. It's hard to explain what this film means to me, and maybe I'm misreading some of what the film meant, but it's a fantastic film, and it's just a warm hug. That's what it is, dude, and that's why you should watch it. Alright, so David Fincher's newest film, The Killer, offers a unique and unexpected perspective on the life of a mediocre assassin who manages to get jobs and get paid regardless of whether he's actually that good. And this kind of contradicts what you'd expect from an assassin movie, which is kind of hilarious because it's basically a mockery of films that have tried to kind of glorify these quiet individuals. And so for me, that was probably the most hilarious part of the film, is how it does the opposite of what you thought the film was going to do, just from the trailer and Michael Fassbender's monologue shtick. And so the film, it definitely delivers a very interesting and quiet portrayal, and it was not at all what I expected. One thing I did not like in this film is it gave off huge Netflix vibes, the way they divided this into numerous chapters. That may totally be part of the joke. That may have flew over my head. It really could be what it is, but I found it really annoying because it was like 6 or 7 chapters, and I'm like, all right, what is the point here? So I'm probably saying this right now, and I'm now realizing that was probably that was a part of the whole joke, but I will say while watching it, I found it kind of distracting and annoying, regardless of what it was trying to go for. I did personally enjoy this film and can really appreciate its nonsense, but it did not leave that same lasting impression on me as it did for Fincher's other films. The storytelling, while intriguing, and I must say the underlying message is commendable. You know, it's very different than what you'd expect, and I do love the way it mocks other assassin films. But I wouldn't say, depending on what you're expecting and how films like this in general, I don't know if it's going to resonate with everyone. That's just what I'm trying to say. It does do a good job of, creating its own niche, I guess. But for people that have expected completely different pacing from Fincher's other films, they may be disappointed with this. I'm not entirely sure. I think really when you go into a film like Fincher's, you have to expect it to be completely different each time. But I'm going to say that this film didn't totally work for me. But in the end, I still thought it was a really good film. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. It's available on Netflix. You should watch it. It is fun. It is a really intriguing movie. I definitely do recommend it. The Hunger Games, Songbirds and Snakes. So, for someone coming into the film hating the last 4 films, I was unbelievably surprised by this film, and I think what made Songbirds and Snakes such a great film is that it presents itself in a much more serious and realistic way. It doesn't resort to that chosen one trope with Katniss Everdeen perceived as a singular savior figure, and man, it was something I just got really tired of, and throughout the entire series it felt very predictable and honestly was an unrewarding story in my opinion. But man, what I love about this film is just how much more authentic it is compared to the rest of the series. I mean, don't even get me started on how awesome the arena looked and how realistic some of those scenes felt and just the way they acted. I could never get behind the arena in the first two Hunger Games films because everything about it was such a joke. I just couldn't take any of it seriously. It was unreal how stupid and frustrating it was to watch those scenes compared to the arena scenes in the prequel. And also, it doesn't spend way too much time on it. It does a good job balancing the world of the Hunger Games versus the arena of the Hunger Games. Some argue that the film rushes through things, and I wouldn't disagree there. However, I just felt like the characters' ideologies were familiar enough to me that I felt I was able to sympathize with both parties without a longer runtime. But I do agree this film could have been enhanced by delving more deeply into the world of the districts, and an additional 30 minutes would not have affected my experience, honestly. In fact, the film is so compelling that it could have included that extra time seamlessly. So without further extending this review, I am going to give Songbirds and Snakes a 4 out of 5. And this is going to come as a shock for a lot of people because I have shat all over every other film, like I mentioned earlier. But I love this one. I think everything about it is so good. And it's just something that I could actually take seriously for once. And I think it's a really great film. I'm not going to lie. I think you should definitely check it out, even if you haven't seen the other Hunger Games films. Thanksgiving. First of all, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving because, you know, white meat, dark meat, all should be carved, right? But yeah, honestly, I'm not going to keep you waiting. This film is really fun. It's original, and it's an entertaining slasher that does not take itself seriously whatsoever. Personally, I know that as a Canadian, this will be my American Thanksgiving every year. I will watch this every year. I haven't been a huge fan of some of Eli Roth's films in the past. I will note that one of them is even very questionable. It includes a Keanu Reeves and a Ana de Armas. And I'm not even going to go into that film because it's unreal. But yeah, he's done some interesting stuff, but I feel like this is the first time where he's really done something that will resonate with the audiences. And yeah, I will just say that there is a bit of a questionable ending. I think might have something to do with it being rushed. It felt rushed, you know what I mean? It didn't feel like the ending made a lot of sense. I can't explain it without obviously you guys watching it, but I also could be completely mistaken, and it might be trying to set up a future sequel. It's kind of unclear. But really, at the end of the day, the film is really fun. It's finally just something different, you know what I mean? You have not seen anything like Thanksgiving yet. Not gonna say anymore. You should watch it. I'm going to give Thanksgiving a 3.5. And yeah, when it comes out on digital, because I guess it's probably out of theaters by now, definitely give it a watch. I think you're going to get some awesome laughs out of it. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It's awesome. It's such a fun film. So as someone who thought Guardians of the Galaxy 3 wasn't all that in a bag of chips, I wanted to wrap up with the Marvels. I mean, not particularly, but I wanted to wrap up with a film that kind of was the last OG Marvel character. And yeah, the film's not good. The villain is terrible. I don't even remember the name, but I did actually have fun with the film for what it was because I knew what to expect going into it. I mean, the trailer didn't do a good job of making anything exciting, and you just knew what was going to happen. And so when the film did do something cool, it was fun. There is moments of chemistry between the three characters, and I was really hoping they do something good with it, but they just rarely did. The concept is really genius, and I think this actually could have been one of the films that reinvented the superhero genre. I mean, the whole swapping places thing could have had awesome choreography, but with a barely functional story filled with predictable tropes, and like I said, just a forgettable villain. All in all, it was unfortunately a just okay experience. I think Marvel is now kind of set up for failure when they take a genius concept and boil it down to a disappointingly generic execution. And I'm very surprised that Marvel really didn't notice this kind of whole phase of their fan base, because you kind of know, or at least I knew going in, that this wasn't going to last forever. And Marvel really needed to do something different to keep things interesting, and they just haven't. I think that's the main problem overall. So, yeah, I had fun with the film for what it was, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would probably skip it if I were you, unless you see it on and you have Disney Plus, then maybe check it out. But yeah, I'm gonna give The Marvels a 2.5 out of 5. It is just okay. Alright, Disney's new film Wish. So first off, I thought the visuals were fantastic. The watercolor pastel-like aesthetics really shine in this film in my opinion, and I think that's the one takeaway from this year when it came to Pixar and Disney was both the animation in both films is by far a standout. I do appreciate Disney's attempted sentiment that we aren't complete without both the beauty and pain of aspiration. However, its message is so poorly translated in the latter half of the film that you honestly have to wonder how anyone looked at this and didn't see through the inherently soulless material. My goodness, because like I don't want to use the AI jab or anything like that, but I'm really getting suspicious. The actors do try their best. Like Chris Pine is great as the villain. His voice, the songs, they're all enjoyable, but his character is so poorly developed that his descent into villainy made no sense, and his very short backstory has practically no bearing on who he is as a leader. There are moments of charm, but considering this is the 100th year special, I'd say this is incredibly embarrassing for Disney because the story is just so poor, dude. And I want to say, the first half of the film, I was enjoying it for what it was. It was fun. There was some good songs, a little bit of questionable lyrics, but overall, I was enjoying it. But then once the film really kicked in, it's like, oh my goodness, I don't even know how to feel about it, really. So yeah, I really don't know what else to say about this film. It's impossible to summarize because it's so underwhelming and rushed. But in the end, I thought it was just okay. I'm going to give Wish a 2.5 out of 5. Yeah, so It's a Wonderful Knife. It's, yeah, it's a movie, I can tell you that. It's definitely trying to parallel It's a Wonderful Life in some ways, but It's a Wonderful Life is a really good movie, whereas this one is pure dog shit. I don't even know what it's trying to do. I know it's trying to be a parody in some ways, but instead of it being a parody, I felt like I was watching a car advertisement or something. Just the way it was filmed and everything, my goodness. The acting is terrible. The story is... I don't even know... There's no chemistry, okay? And I'd really just rather park my ass and watch paint dry for 3 hours than watch this movie ever again. So, without wasting more of your time on this film, I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5. Good Burger 2. So, Good Burger, the original, I think is a really fun film. I don't even think it was intentional because you could probably look at it and go, oh yeah, this is kind of a bad film, but it's just such a fun vibe. The actors are all just fun. Everything's just fun, dude. And that's what I really enjoyed about it. It didn't get to the point where it was too dumb, but it just clicked. I don't even know how to explain that. And I think that's something that was an impossible task for Good Burger 2. There was just no way they were going to be able to pull off what made the original so special. And so in the end, you kind of have a very boring villain, and everything just feels really cheap in this film. They almost rely on callbacks and jokes from the past to try and keep this film interesting, but I just felt like all these gimmicks were too heavily relied on. And personally, I thought that Good Burger 2 was just average, so I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. Saltburn. Oh boy, where do I begin with this one? Well, I'll just start off with saying that this is a very basic film in terms of its message, very familiar. It's basically an eat the rich sort of film, and I thought it was mostly what kept it interesting was the unique performances. Barry Keoghan, man, he just does a fantastic job playing these disturbing, quirky roles. I didn't really feel like I was watching a standout film. It's kind of predictable in a lot of ways. Even the plot twist in the film is kind of not surprising. It almost felt like it was trying to be clever when the film overall isn't clever, in my opinion. It's just really weird, and that's probably the most impressive part about it, is just how far the film was willing to go in terms of its disturbing territory. You know what I mean? Like, I really appreciate how far they took it, and you won't see this kind of content in film nowadays, if that makes sense. But yeah, without really spoiling anything, I'll just say that it's going to be a very controversial film as more people see it in the future. But I really enjoyed it for what it was. I probably won't watch it again, but I am going to give Saltburn a 3.5 out of 5. It was a very interesting experience, and I do appreciate that. You know what I mean? I appreciate how original it is in that regard. Ridley Scott's Napoleon. Oh boy, was I excited for this film. Quite possibly my most anticipated film of the year. I'm a huge fan of history. I love history. So watching this and just seeing all the historical inaccuracies and Napoleon being painted unfairly, like as a loser. Oh man, it was just so frustrating, dude. The sequences are rushed. The relationship is a slog. Vanessa Kirby and Joaquin Phoenix, they just lack chemistry. And I honestly felt like the actors didn't know what to do with their roles except be bitter and awkward. But I think the biggest problem with this film for me was that it was marketed as a film about his life in the trailers, but the actual film is just an imagined character study between Napoleon and Josephine. And it's not even that a historical inaccurate film is bad. I mean, you have The Gladiator, for example, which is a great film that is not historically inaccurate at all. But here, it just doesn't replace it with anything remotely entertaining. I think that's the biggest problem here for me, was that it didn't have to be super accurate for me to be entertained by it. It's just that the film is just not good. And it's apparently intended as a comedy, and there's, I don't know, I guess in that regard, there were only a few moments where I actually laughed. The battle scenes, they're always good, right? Ridley Scott, but with little context going into it, Napoleon's best moments felt very underwhelming. So even the good scenes that Ridley Scott always dominates at felt really unrewarding. To me, the finished product is really just okay. I didn't think it was bad like some people said, but I can't blame them for feeling that way. I don't know what he was trying to go for, and his response to anyone, criticizing his work is just laughable and immature. I don't think the director's cut will be any better, except maybe it'll improve on Scott's failed attempt at a character study compared to the theatrical cut. Maybe I'd give that an extra half a star now going into the director's cut, knowing what the film will actually be about. We'll see. I don't know. 2.5 out of 5. All right, and the final one on our ranked list for this month is Dream Scenario, starring Nicolas Cage. And let me just say, the guy is really good in this film. You can tell that he is really put in the work to play such a weird role. I mean, there's moments where he's, Nick Cage, and then there's moments where he's just a regular guy. So yeah, props to him. He's really good in this film. He's relatable at times in the sense that he just wants to do something more with his life. He kind of comes off as a loser and an asshole in a lot of ways, just like his wife and some of the other characters. But it's really interesting the way they kind of subvert your expectations in the trailer to instead provide a more compact message about cancel culture. And I think for the most part, what they did in the trailer by subverting your expectations was really cool. But I won't lie that even during the film, it almost seemed like the concept had some issues committing to a genre at times. I wasn't sure always what it was going for during the duration of the film. And that's not always a bad thing. There's some things in here that kind of catch you off guard. And some of it's a good thing, and then some of it felt lazy to me. I wasn't really sure how to feel about the ending, but I do think that this film is hard to end. I personally think they could have done a better job with it, but it is really hard, regardless of how you do it, to tie this off and satisfy everyone who's watching it, right? But I don't know. I did really enjoy it. I don't know if I need to watch it again ever, if that makes sense, but I thought it was a really interesting film, and I wasn't disappointed that my expectations were subverted completely when seeing the film. But I won't lie, I think that they should have committed to certain things and focused on certain areas more. At times it looked like they got carried away a bit. And in the end, the message is a little kind of iffy. But regardless, I thought this was a really good film. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into the video. Obviously, you can tell it's still in the experimental phase because I did not expect this video to go 25 minutes, but I promise that the December one, which will come out in early January, will be more focused on the rankings, and, you know, the reviews won't be as long. I'm going to try and max them out at 2 minutes so I can get my message across and move on to the next one. But I will timestamp everything in the description, so if you guys don't want to watch the whole thing, I completely understand that. I look forward to your comments, and I hope you guys have a great December. I will be dropping another video later this month, and I can't wait to share that with you very soon. Take care, guys. Bye.